Dear participants of the first FIDE World Online Corporate Championship, we are really happy that more than 1,500 participants gathered today to compete for the first place, but more importantly, to show the love for chess, to enjoy playing chess, and to collect best memories from this championship. We have been surprised by the number of applications for this championship as it never happened before. And we have 280 teams competing with more than 100 grandmasters, men and women, participating in the tournament. It's a great combination of skills, talents, and real joy for our great game. We are also happy that companies were trying their best to collect the best players working around their ecosystems, and we will have more and more partners in the future, more and more people involved in playing chess and organizing chess and partnering chess. One of our initiatives that we got support for from you, from the companies participating, is donations for our social projects, including educational chess, social chess, and supporting our chess veterans. Thanks a lot. We are very grateful for your enormous support. Good luck at the tournament, and I wish you good health. We are also thankful to our key partners in this tournament, Chess.com, for organizing the event and providing best possible conditions for all players, all teams. And finally, good luck at the tournament, and I wish you good health.
Earlier drama from PogChamp, some very, very exciting games, and now we're ready for another amazing night of interesting games. So I'm actually really hyped. But I do know our host over here, Robert, is a little bit tired. He actually mentioned he only got a bowl of cereal a few moments ago, while I got a whole pizza. So in some ways, I'm doing a little bit better.
Did you bring your resume? Because we are here for the corporate championship. Just wondering, if any companies here that you're particularly interested in are rooting for anybody. Do you have friends at any of these places?
Ooh, I definitely have heard that Carissa Yip is actually with American Express. Do correct me if I'm wrong, but that is going to be one very, very exciting partnership for sure. Because not only is she a very young player, but American Express is a pretty big company, so lots of exciting things happening here.
Yeah, we love to see those partnerships between chess players and companies. There are many strong players that are employees of the companies. I know Goldman Sachs, a couple of international masters at the top. So it's certain to be a very strong pool. And we are in the Western pool. Earlier today, we saw the Eastern pools. Let's just remind everybody of what this tournament is like, what the format is. And as you see here, there are 8 different groups, 2 pools, East and West, and there's 6 groups in the East, 2 in the West, just based on where the companies are located. And it is a Swiss pairing system, which means that you play other teams in your score group, and you can only play another team one time. And the matches, they're 1 game for each player, 4 games total. You need 2.5 points out of those 4 games to win your match. And of course, 2-2 would be a tie. So it's going to be fun. Nemo, you've played in team events before. It's also quite stressful because not only are you looking at your own game, at the corner of your eye, you're looking, hey, how are my teammates doing? Do I suddenly need to win this game rather than draw it? That can put a lot of pressure on you, and maybe you can't play as objective chess as you'd like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, playing these kind of events are always more stressful than when you only have to worry about yourself, right? Because you've also been a coach. I'm not too sure if you've been also playing in the
Yep,
Olympiad or anything like
played
that.
as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
played as well. Yeah. So we both know, like, oh my God, sometimes you really do have to win the game in order to make sure your team either ties or wins. And that is when it gets super stressful. A whole team, 3 other people's games rely on you. That's when you get really worried about it.
Yes, and earlier today we saw some moves where the players certainly regretted those, and you feel responsibility not just to
Mhm.
yourself and your own play, but to others. as we're talking about, adds to the pressure. But there are many strong players. A lot of these teams playing for fun. There is a charitable component to this as well, raising funds for some very worthy causes. There's FIDE is doing a great job in organizing this tournament, and it looks like we actually have liftoff. So I'm going to start clicking on some games as they appear here, and oh, lo and behold, we have a matchup between Vladislav Goncharov, who's 2,500 plus, at least on Chess.com rapid ratings. And then Alejandro Hoffman, that's a grandmaster. I don't think that 2148 rating is accurate. What do you say, Nina?
I will say that he probably just has not played a lot of chess online. It's probably the most likely reason for the rating.
Yes. And well, we start with e6 and a3, taking away the b4 square from that bishop, which wanted to go there to pin the knight as it goes to c3. A very common start to this game here. And black strikes in the center with d5. So Nemo, I think we are just in for a real battle. We're in for a treat, frankly. Two very strong players in the first game we're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, both of these players are very solid. Even though white is a national master, technically, he does have the 2500 blitz rating on chess.com, and presumably he's a very solid player. And they're both just playing, this opening like they know it, and I'm sure they do. It's a quite common opening, but it's very solid, and we'll see some interesting gameplay arise.
And Alejandro Hoffman, Grandmaster, is part of the team from Sun Distribution. Their lineup is super strong. I'm looking at it right now. They have an international master on board 2, and their board 4 is rated 2140. So from top to bottom, this team has a lot of force, title players, and that's going to be a hard team to topple.
Wow. I mean, I just can't even imagine, being such a strong player and also working at the same time. It's just like it's such a great opportunity, honestly, for FIDE to be able to create this kind of event for a much larger sort of base, because we have events for top players and we also have events such as PogChamps for influencers. But a lot of other people also want to be playing in a team environment, and this one is perfect for that.
Absolutely. And chess is really all the rage right now. And it's great to see players get to represent their companies, play alongside their colleagues and friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fun atmosphere. And this game, it may be a little more pressure filled than some of the others because it is 2,500 plus rated players. White just made the move rook to c1, lining this rook up when this pawn eventually takes on d5, or if this pawn is captured on c4, when this file opens up, there's a rook on c1. Happy to see it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually rather liking the way that they've set up this position, because it's a very instructive opening. It's very typical of these kind of d4 openings where they either get an isolated pawn or maybe hanging pawns. Actually, with this move c6, we see black going for quite possibly the most solid um play that he can create. And I'm actually curious as to see what Black's idea is for potentially trying to win this game. I'm not sure about what White's team is actually looking like.
So I was looking this up, and it's a bit unclear because their ratings are, they have this 2,500 plus Goncharov on board 1, and then board 2 has no rating. Board 3 is about 1,850, and board 4 has no rating, which is either they don't have much experience and they're new players, or they play a ton online and just have never played in a FIDE rated event, and you don't know what to expect. They can be very strong.
This is gonna be an interesting match. I mean, honestly, I feel like White wants to try to win this game, especially because the board 2 on Black's side is actually an international master. So presumably, they might get a point there, and he might need to win this game in order to even the score a little bit.
And he plays a5, so we were seeing a lot of quiet play. All of a sudden, a5 happens. White quickly plays queen c2. And the reason why, everybody, is that when black takes on c4, white wants to take back in one turn. So had white chosen bishop e2 or bishop d3, perhaps that would be the moment to take on c4, so white doesn't gain the extra tempo. Whereas if black takes on c4, you take back in one turn. Your queen is happy to be on c2. Just the little things in chess can really add up.
For sure. I mean, these are the kind of things that you have to really keep in mind when you're playing d4 openings. If you're somebody who is unfamiliar with these structures, any of these exchanges is going to determine the pawn structure for the rest of the game, and then you have to make your plans based on these pawn structures.
And we saw the capture. Bishop takes back. If b5 was played, no, knight d5, more solid. I think that's what we're going to see from Grandmaster Hoffman. Is I may not have as much space, but I have no weakness to pile up on. Had he played b5, well, we see very clearly that this c6 pawn could quickly become a target, and it's in line with a queen and a rook. That could be a problem. So instead, knight to d5 was the choice. I like that move. Just trying to trade pieces, and he's going to work his way to hold. But Nemo, I'm just looking around here. I'm going to go to a different game. We have Grandmaster Francesco Rambaldi taking on Piotr Wojciechowski. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. I did my best here. But this position is interesting where Grandmaster Rambaldi, he is representing the team from Microsoft Redmond. And against NVIDIA, we see that there is a pin down the C file, but the knight on C6 is well protected for now. I just like the placement of White's pieces. All of them seem to be in great position, and Black is a bit more passive.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Francesco is a rather young player, if I'm not wrong. I do believe he's around 20 or 21 years old.
You're correct.
Yeah, so he was actually known as one of the rising talents, I believe, of Italy before he went to university in the US. I do think he went to St. Louis University, but
I think he's still there, actually. I'm not positive, but he has been at St. Louis University. That's right.
Yeah, so he's a very, very strong grandmaster. I mean, it's actually crazy to see, like, such strong grandmasters play, representing such big companies at this event too.
You know what's funny, Nemo, is usually we say, hey, can somebody go check Chessbase for opening preparation? Now we're like, can somebody go check LinkedIn? Can anybody help us? Is Francesco, is he a free agent? Is he actually working there full time? Is he an intern? Would love to know the exact connection to Microsoft Redmond, but either way, they're happy to have him because they are the top seed in the West Group, rather, A, where they have an IM on board 2, an FM on board 3, and Women's International Master Megan Lee, 2,200 plus on board 4. So from top to bottom, this team is super strong.
So now I'm just wondering, maybe the way to get an internship is to be really good at chess and be like, oh, there's the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship, by the way. Do you possibly need a chess player? I think this is my new approach to finding internships.
Yeah, do you like chess? There's this big tournament that maybe you want to win, because if you win, there's a world championship at stake and an invitation to the world championship featuring Magnus Carlsen and whomever wins the candidates. The team that raises the most money for a charitable cause will be invited. We see here on screen that the first 4 teams in the final corporate world ranking secure 4 seats each to participate in online simul against the winner of the candidates. That's exciting. Will that be MVL? Will it be
okay? Now that's my next question. What happens if it's Magnus Carlsen winning that ticket? Can you imagine Magnus Carlsen being like, yes, I get to play in a simul against MVL, but in fact, it's actually MVL having played a simul against Magnus Carlsen and his team.
That would be beyond hilarious. I kind of would hope that would happen. However, Magnus' team did suffer a defeat earlier today, so it's not likely, perhaps impossible already, that the team from Kindred makes it out of their pool. And so other teams will have a chance there. Plenty of great opportunities on the line and just fun chess all around. So we like Francesco's position. I'm going to bop around some more. I'm just going to click on a random game because we don't want to focus too much just on the title players. And here we see that with Anna Paula Borda-Rodas here, and with the white pieces, she has a 1,000 point rating edge, but Black is solid to this point, right? Even material. This is the kind of thing you want when you play a dragon. Bishop on G7, knight on E5. Maybe you'll get your knight to C4 if you put a rook on C8 in the near future. So pretty solid start here for Black.
This is definitely a very solid position. I have to say Black definitely did her homework when it comes to choosing an opening that works for her and keeps the position solid and tight for as long as they can.
And this is still within that matchup of sun distribution and IQ-VIA. And for Black, for Tirtha here, it's a position where, hey, maybe I just take this knight on D5. I say, all right, your knight's attacking mine. After I take, you take back. That dragon bishop can be really powerful, especially if you bring your queen to B6, hit the B2 pawn, threaten the center here. I feel like Black could actually start to cause some threats.
I mean, I definitely do think that if she might be underrated. In fact, I mean, I don't know. Once again, like how many games these players have played online, right? So I do like this h6 move too. Of course, we have to wonder a little bit what happens after maybe knight takes f6. Oh, which white? You know, and if e takes f6, then of course there's going to be double pawns and a little bit of an awkward pawn structure with the weak pawn
Hmm.
on d6. And if the bishop takes, then similar position happens. But other than that, black is holding on pretty well against somebody who is 1,000 points higher rated than she is.
And those are the kind of mistakes we see for less experienced players, at this rating level, and see the h6 pawn dropped. Of course, white could have taken on f6 and hurt the pawn structure, but that move h6, it had a clear purpose to attack this
Mhm.
bishop. But unfortunately, the capture on f6 will hurt the pawn structure too much, and now a pawn has been lost. So for sun distribution, feeling better now that your board four is starting to win pieces and is much higher rated.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still like partly in shock at how strong some of the teams that are being fielded in this are. You know, in some ways, it's almost comparable to the World Chess Olympiad, where they have extremely strong teams. And here, I mean, we're seeing board four being 2,100. That's
Yeah,
just incredible.
and we see another really highly rated board four in this Microsoft Redmond match where Megan Lee with the black pieces, she's up a queen for a rook and she's completely winning. So Microsoft Redmond looks like they're out to a quick start. I mean, you look at the rating differential here, it is, I guess, no surprise that Megan Lee is well ahead, and she's a very strong player. So this is somebody who is going to be in any match, no matter the rating of her opponent on board four. I think some other teams may have a board four potentially in like the 2200 plus range like
Hmm.
her. She's not going to be outmatched. So this Microsoft Redmond team, from Grandmaster Rambaldi on board one all the way down to Megan Lee, 2200 plus FIDE on board four, they're going to be really hard to beat. There's no surprise they're the top seed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the closest match maybe for Microsoft Redmond will be the team fielding the Argentinian Grandmaster on board one. I think that will be one of the closer matches for them.
Definitely. And I see some questions about rating caps. Uh, each team is allowed maximum one player rated over 2,500. So you can't just bring in all these free agents of Magnus and Fabiano and Anish and just have a celebration of the top players in the world. You get one. And some of the players have been brought in as free agents to represent the companies. Some have long-standing relationships. For example, Anish Giri, we talked a lot about him earlier with Optiver. They have been working together for years. Anish has done blindfold simuls. He's trained some of the players, and they have a very nice working relationship as a sponsor of his, as a proud partner, and they attend Vaikanze and Tata Steel event every single year, many chess players at that company.
Wow, that's actually very, very impressive. I mean, with the growing of chess as both an esports and in the world in general, it's really, really great to see a lot of more bigger companies get involved in the chess space and be part of this FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championship because, we do want to show chess can be amazing and having more sponsors can definitely help make this happen.
Definitely the case. And speaking of amazing, I just looked at this position again with Goncharov and Alejandro Hoffman. And well, look at this position. White's position is amazing here. White took over all of the space, and Black's pieces, the knight on h7 has its toe stepped on by the bishop on f6. You're just fighting for squares. And then Goncharov brings the knight into e5. I think we're going to see, at least by title, an upset on this board.
Yeah, for sure. I think White's position is beautiful. You couldn't possibly ask for more. It's so difficult to find a move for Black in this position. It's just so difficult.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to find a single one. And the threat is this pawn on c6 can be captured. You're just gaining space in the position. If the rook moves to c8, maybe even this pawn on a4 is lost. So knight g5 was the choice. I think this is a move out of desperation, but it
Hmm.
does put quick pressure on the e4 pawn. Hey, maybe White's so focused on the queen side that you won't see the pawn hanging on e4. I think Goncharov will see this and can make a calm move, even pawn to f3. Just say, no, no pawn for you, and everything is solidified for White.
I definitely do like the forehead camera that we are now seeing. This is the classical, the chess cam that we see for a lot of players. The very well known forehead camera.
Yes, because they forget that they're on camera to begin with. So they're leaning in
Yeah,
to
they're
try to study the
leaning.
board.
Yeah.
And well, we see that very focused look. And f6 played, all right, trying to kick this bishop out. It can go right back into d6, but then knight f7. I feel like Grandmaster Hoffman really fighting well to this point. The position is, it says plus 2.4, but Nemo, I think if you and I were looking at this and say we're getting into a blitz game, we're like, wait, I know white's better. You have more space, you have the bishop pair, but how do you actually win?
Yeah, this is a very good question, right? And you run the risk of just making aimless moves, and then all of a sudden black makes a comeback. So white does have to actually play pretty carefully here in order to preserve his advantage and also find a potential way to just improve his position. Because sure, he's winning, but how's he going to, and that is the part where I get a little bit worried because you're better, so you think that these breakthroughs work, but in fact, maybe you're relieving some of the pressure on black's position.
That's right. And actually, we saw the evaluation bar start sinking. And I look at this and say, wait, d5, I'm breaking through. That looks great. And yet, black's position is stabilizing somewhat. I would try to push this pawn to d6 in the very near future if I can. And if I'm looking at this from Grandmaster Hoffman's perspective, I need to get my pieces out somehow. But I don't quite see the way. Rook a8 is a defensive move. I'm looking at d6. You can't stop me from pushing that pawn. It's protected. Instead, he says, hey, Goncharov, let's go after g6 first and keep black tied down all across the board.
And now there's knight h6. Okay, so now we will probably see the move d6 from Robert. The one thing you never want to do is let your opponent get their knight in front of of your pass pawn. And as I was just saying that, white just retreated the bishop. So now I'm a little bit worried.
I could see black winning this game. This is a pass pawn on e4, d5 rather, but it's also an isolated pawn. So the knight blockade is very strong. That could be an issue. And if you can just pile up against this pawn, maybe you'll even win it. Queen e6, a nice move, taking away the g3 square from the bishop. The b6 pawn remains defended. f6 remains defended. Now there's a fight for the e file, and I really like bishop b7. Let's bring that knight to f5. It's not really doing much over here. So I think that Grandmaster Hoffman playing quickly, trying to keep pace on the clock. He's also holding his own in the position after a rough start.
Yeah, this is going to be a quite interesting fight. And that's actually one of the key things about being a Grandmaster. Like, you have to be able to come back from worse positions and be able to try to even win those positions from when you come back from a worse time.
Yes, and I'm just going to click on another game real quick here because there are many going on. And I see that we have Bogdan Vianu, a friend of mine who I know very well for many years. He's playing with the black pieces. He went to graduate school at Yale, and he is at Goldman Sachs, and he's representing them along with another international master who maybe you know from Canada, Ziquan. But a bit older, so maybe not as familiar, but...
I will be 100% honest and say I don't know, but I'm going to also nod and smile.
Yeah, you had the blankest of blank stares. So, but Bogdan here with the black pieces, I mean, look at these pawns and that knight on d3, just sinking that in. And knight d5 was played, queen takes e4, walks into some kind of discovered attack, so that looks too risky. The queen drops back, and I like black's position here. I think that Bogdan is just controlling most of the board at this point. And for Prasanna Rao, an international master himself, this is a pretty high quality matchup in the early rounds.
For sure. I mean, it's always really fun when you play these kind of more for fun events, right? And then you actually play against somebody who is of equal strength. It's very, very, it's definitely great because I'm sure a lot of these players are very focused on their work and all the things they got to do in life. So it's always great, honestly, for me, whenever I get to play against somebody my own strength in these kind of more for fun events.
Yes, and it makes me happy to see Bogdan play because when I've seen him, so the New York chess scene, they have a corporate chess league spearheaded by actually a player on Goldman Sachs, Alexandra Wiener, as well as Alyssa Melikina, a FIDE master who works at Debevoise Plimpton, the law firm. And so an exchange sack.
But bishop f2?
Yeah, bishop f2. That is a problem because and it's played. That's such an easy thing to overlook, everybody. You think, oh, they'll just take me back. My queen can take, and I get a pawn and a knight for that rook. My passed pawn is good. But then bishop f2 happens. And you're like, oh, no, I'm not getting that pawn. The bishop will replace that rook on d4 next move. That spells trouble for Bogdan.
Yeah, this is one of those things. If you don't play chess on the daily, if you don't do puzzles on the daily, you might run into these kind of tactical mishaps, and it's very easy to miss these kind of moves.
It really is. And I'm looking at the lineup for Goldman Sachs against Vita Health. Prasanna Rao playing on board 2. So they put a 1200 on board 1 and put their international master on board 2, likely trying to score some upsets on board 2, just or some victories, I should say, and then say, I'm going to throw my board 1 to the wolves. That's going to be a tough uphill battle. But look at this. Queen b6 check just played, and that looks like an oversight by white because this pawn on d3 trying to undermine it and win it, and the queen b6 check happens, and now you can take on b3 with the queen.
Yeah, okay. There's still chances here for black, even though the position is quite uncomfortable. And the engine says that this is very much winning for white, but white does have to be a little bit careful about that d pawn. And as we saw from PogChamps earlier today, it's okay. Wait, this is checkmate.
Yeah, you're gonna have to play g6 after queen f5 check. You have no choice, and you are going to lose your queen.
I'm just looking at this pawn structure, and I'm getting a little bit of flashback from Sardash's game from earlier, and I just feel so bad because it was the f7 pawn that he took that was protected, and he lost the queen. So I'm just remembering that position right now.
And that was a key move by white to take the c4 pawn, because this queen on g7 by itself can help out. But if you put your king to the first rank, hey, maybe there's a queen e1 check. But thankfully, if you're looking at this from white's perspective, even after queen e1 check, queen f1, don't take the queen, because then the pawn replaced it with a new queen. You play queen f1, now the square is under attack, and you're going to gang up on the d2 pawn and likely win it very shortly.
But f4 is even more accurate from white. Just not going to any of that, just saying, I don't want my king to be checked.
And where's the queen go from here? I guess you can try to win this bishop directly on a8, because after queen takes f4, king h1 works, pawn g3 also works. The queen is very nice in this diagonal, and you're going to just zigzag, check, 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 and then take this pawn on d2 with your queen. And this is a tricky move. Please take my pawn on d2. I have queen e1 check, getting your rook. But we're going to see the zigzag. I don't know what it's called.
I don't. It's a zigzag for whenever you're trying to get your queen closer to somewhere. And I think this position is very much resignable. And of course, black does resign.
Yes, indeed. Let's go back to the game between Grandmaster Hoffman and Goncharov, who's over 2,500. This is a mess. It's even material. Whose king is worse? This bishop on c6 is strong, but this queen and bishop for white is looking nice. The evaluation bar says about even, which means that somebody's just going to blunder and lose in the next few moves.
I do think that Alejandro's cam is definitely the key point of this game. He looks like he's trying to see something that none of us are able to see.
Just trying to, king a8, hiding the king in the corner, because if this king on g2 moved out the way, there could have been a pin. So I like that decision, just to hide the king, tuck it away. And I feel like black should have better winning chances than white. But now that I say it, watch something go wrong here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here I'm just like, wow, it's so easy for one of the sides to make a mistake, because they're playing with 20 seconds, and there's only a 2-second increment, guys. 2 seconds. 2-second increment is basically just enough. And I was saying that we leave the a pawn hanging. So now white is actually up a pawn. Still very difficult for white to win, because he has one pass pawn, and that's pinned to his king, right? But this b4 move is really, really strong, actually.
Trying to use the bishop. So queen a4 check. You can just take back this pawn instead of allowing the queen to win it back. Queen a4 check. Now you can take on b4 with the queen if you want. And he takes with the pawn, giving black some time. That bishop on f2 is pinned. Is knight c4 a move? That's what was played, and that knight may come into the attack.
Still a very complicated position, but white does have at least a draw. I don't think he wants a draw, though. However, it does feel like white is playing very much for the win. However, I do believe that, despite being down the pawn, it's still a very difficult position for white to be able to win. It's just a matter of black not blundering a piece or checkmate in this case with b. Oh, wait a minute!
You were just saying, where's the mate queen Queen d8 looks good. Oh, and you can just take on c8 because the
There was
knight is
also
pinned.
just bishop takes b6, checkmate in one instead of queen takes b6, but
Oh,
this will
you know,
serve the purpose
mate
for
in one.
sure.
That's not classy enough.
Yeah, mate in one's not class enough. I have to go for a fancier, you know.
It's so funny because bishop takes b6 is checkmate just on the board. But I'm looking at queen takes b6 and I was trying to find the follow up because usually that's what happens, right? You don't have a checkmate at one, you have a checkmate in a few, and you need to figure it out. But bishop takes b6 was mate on the spot.
Yeah, I think the thing is that most people do not expect they have checkmate in one because nobody really sees checkmate in one. Like we don't have a lot of checkmate in ones at the level that these grandmaster and national master RBS 2500 are playing at, right? So, they're just going for a very logical move, and usually queen takes with a check is more logical than bishop takes with a check.
Completely agreed. And I think we have a couple games still going here that we can just check out. So many different games happening. So let me click on one of these, just pick one at random.
Mhm.
Oh, and we have an international master, Muhammad Lutfi Ali, with the black pieces. And wow, it's kind of early stages, but both players have spent quite a deal of time to get here. And that's what happens in these high level games, right, Nemo, where people are like, wait, why are they moving so slowly? Aren't they the best players in the world? It's because a tiny inaccuracy could pay cause real problems for a player. Could be a big price to pay. So they're just trying to play those perfect moves to avoid a
Mhm.
situation where they're just playing on the defensive for the rest of the game, for example.
And I'm also going to take a wild guess here and say a lot of these players are maybe not playing chess every single day. So,
Right.
so in some cases they're truly just a little bit rusty with their tactics and such. But this b4 move is very creative. We're just trying to get the pawn swapped off and kick out the knight from c5 eventually. Hopefully soon because we don't want the knight to be an outpost there.
What a move there. And I'm looking at the pairings right now. Marcelo Ibar is an FIDE master representing Kimberly Clark, firm in the United States. And international master Mohammed Lutfi Ali is representing PT Pelabuhan Tanjung Priok. And I mean, it's just cool to see that this is a very international flair.
Mhm.
And international masters, international flair. They actually have two international masters on this team. So it's not just international master Ali. There's also international master Fermancia, who's 2405. Their board 3 is 2280, and their board 4 is 2250. This is such a strong team. Wow. Wow.
On
Just
average rating, would that team not be one of the higher rated?
they're the number one team in their pool. So
Oh, I see. Okay.
between them and then Amex, which is starring Carissa Yip on board 1, and international master Mark Ginsburg on board 2, 2230 rated Andy Lin on board 3, and a 2100 Dario Teodori on board 4. So there's some real strong lineups in this pool here.
Yeah, wow. It's just very impressive to, see all of these players play at such a high level.
Yeah, and let's see. So rook a3 played and bishop takes c5. It was too easy to blunder with pawn to b4, forgetting that your bishop on e3 is under attack through that pawn. Like I was looking, hey, can I just play b4, kick the knight? That would have been a mistake. So instead, we see a swap on c5. Rook takes b7. Black is down a pawn, but we have the presence of opposite colored bishops that should give chances to hold. I just like white's position, that rook on b7, holding the forward on b3 while putting pressure on e7. The bishop on e2 can work its way in maybe to c4 and push the pawn to d6. Nemo, this looks real nice for white. An extra
Yeah,
pawn,
definitely
free
one of the
position.
better positions for white. I mean, he's also just up a pawn. So the one idea you don't want to do in this position as white is to trade off the rooks, right? Because opposite color bishop endgames are oftentimes a draw. So that's the one thing that white does need to avoid.
And yeah, I agree with that. I also would not play b4 anytime soon for white because the pawn on c5 can be a target. You'll notice that this bishop on f6 is holding down the pawn e7. For example, it's a rook to c7. That bishop will struggle to then go defend the c5 pawn as well. So I would keep this b3 pawn. It helps the bishop on c4. I'd be looking at d6 right now because that f7 pawn is a true target with the presence of opposite colored bishops.
Mm-hmm.
And black down to 145 and white down to 135 in terms of time. So this is a difficult conversion, but white should be able to press on for a while.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think here about all the different plans, and somebody has actually offered a draw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that it was the player with the black pieces.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a wild assumption here too. Usually, I mean, offering draws are a good idea, especially when you know you have very like small chances to win the position. Oh, and white actually takes it. Okay, he does not want to push
Whoa.
on.
Whoa, I would never
Okay.
agree to a draw here. And I understand his opponent's high rated. He's running short on time, but white's up a pawn. There's no real risk. And it's not trying to be overly critical. I respect the decision, but it just feels like, for the team, maybe they already lost the match. So it's like, even if I win, there's nothing to it because they were outrated across the boards. But it felt like a position white could play on without any risk.
For sure.
And I don't know, it's taking me to random places now. Maybe that means the round is over with, or no, there's a
Uh,
couple games left. I see one I just pulled up here between Paulina Carreras and no name.
oh wait, how did they just not have a name?
I don't know,
All right.
but it's a winning pawning game for white, even material, but white's G pawn is going to promote first. So this looks like a win for white.
Yeah, this is definitely this will be very quick win for white.
Yeah, the pawn's too fast, black too slow to get that pawn across the board. And this should be king to e3, bring that king towards the pawn, and then bring your queen in to go win the pawn.
Yeah.
All right, so what teams are these players representing? So many different teams, hard to keep track. And
Yeah, it's not like when they have the same flag or anything, right? It's like you have to make sure that each player is representing a specific team. Usually, when we're commentating on team tournaments, all players are either from the same country. But usually, like 100% of the time, I think I've really only seen team tournaments when everybody was from the same country. So this event is definitely a little bit different, where we see players not identified by country, but rather which corporation they represent.
That's right. And this is a matchup between Amazon US East and Annaa from Mexico, where that team, that Mexican squad, has an international master on board 1 and 3, a FIDE master on board 2, and Paulina Carreras. It says 1914 next to her name here, but I'm looking. She's a 1900 plus player. So this is another very strong lineup that has a great chance of winning the pool.
Yeah, okay. Well, every time I hear about like, these corporations with two IMs and FM, like, wow, that's pretty impressive for sure.
Yeah, it really is. So we're going to get results in the books here. It seems like the first round matchups have come to a conclusion. We got to look into a bunch of different matches. We will see which teams are living up to their pre-tournament rankings, which teams may have suffered an upset here, an upset there. And well, there are a lot of players that are super strong to keep an eye on, but we don't prioritize a highly rated player over some of the players who are on board 4 because every single point is important. Board 4 counts as 1 point for a win. Board 1 counts as 1 point for a win. So you can't take any board for granted.
Actually, I had a question. What is Microsoft Redmond? Is that just Microsoft, but a subsidiary or?
The Redmond office, I guess.
Oh, so is there another Microsoft team?
So yeah, they're the Redmond campus in Washington.
Oh, okay. That's actually really cool.
And yeah, well, let's take a look at some of the scores from this round. I was just talking about Microsoft Redmond. So we see they won 4-0 over NVIDIA. Grandmaster Francesco Rambaldi led the way there on the top board. But from top to bottom, this is a strong lineup. We saw on the next board, whoa, is this right? That on the next board, Sun Distribution, despite having the higher ratings, is down 3-0?
Oh no!
Oh
The
my
only
gosh.
person who won was Francesco.
Sorry, I misspoke, I guess.
Oh.
No, Francesco's team swept. They did great. But in this match between Sun Distribution, Alejandro Hoffman, we were looking at his game for quite a while. We saw him get, he could have been checkmated, but he ended up losing a piece and resigned. His team, despite being the number 2 overall seed, they got in some big trouble here.
Ooh, I mean, that just goes to show ratings aren't everything, right? Like, when you're playing chess, you're truly just playing the position.
Yeah, and I'm just going to confirm this result. We could have some mistakes. There's a lot of results to parse through. So Yeah, let's keep on going to see some of the other matches. Here we have Carissa Yip on the American Express team. They swept International Master Carissa Yip, International Mark Ginsburg, Annie Lin, very strong player, and Daria Teodori, 2100 plus, and just such a strong lineup from top to bottom. They're going to make their mark on this field as well. And it's cool. I mean, there's so many good teams. You can go to the chess.com events page. You can go to chess-results. We can get some commands going in the channels to give you links to see how the teams are doing. Well, there is going to be a break between the end of this round and the next round. We want to remind everyone of the schedule because after today, we're right back at it tomorrow, 7 a.m. Pacific time, just like today, starting early for those teams from the Eastern pool. And we will have 2 more rounds left after this. So Nemo, it's going to be fun. I think we're off to a good start here.
For sure.
Anything you're looking for out of this pool in the next couple rounds?
I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to be very excited to see the top teams play against each other because we will see some very, very exciting matchups. I mean, we already saw some very intense games, and the games are very high quality as well. So I'm honestly just excited to see all these corporations play against each other. And I wonder, too, if they're maybe flexing a little bit, you know, on the corporate calls with each other when they're talking about possible collaborations, like, hey, my chess team, just be yours.
That's true. There might be some friendly rivalries. As I was mentioning earlier, in New York, for example, there is a New York corporate chess league. So plenty of the teams that are taking part in these pools at this point, they have played against one another time and time again in that league. So it's a lot of fun. There's just going to be some friendly rivalries here and there, but ultimately they're all representing their companies, trying to do them proud. And on that note, Nemo and I are going to take a break. We will be back shortly for the second round of these pools here. You'll not want to miss the action. And we return, ready for more coverage of this wonderful FIDE World Corporate Championship. Nemo, we had a good first round. We'll have two more tonight. The players, they could be tired. You know, it's late. Some of them could slip up because of the late hour. But what do you think of the teams? Do you think they're just more pumped than they will ever be tired?
I honestly do think they'll be more pumped than they'll ever be tired. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are getting, competitive chess these days with the whole pandemic thing going on. So for some of these players, this might actually be their one of their few chances in which they can actually play competitive chess. And not only that, there will be some players that are possibly playing international masters or FIDE masters or even grandmasters for the first time in their lives because of the nature of the event.
That's true. And well, we have some games to go over, just some fun positions, just to help people learn, see what's going on from various teams. And the first game that I'm pulling up here is from the match between Tata Communications from the US playing Grupo Munoz from, is that Nicaragua? I don't want to make a mistake. I can't see the. I'm gonna look it
always
up.
so scared. The other day, I actually said an Indonesian flag is a Polish flag, and I felt
Oh,
so
I
bad.
can't see. That's why I'm looking it up. I'm like trying to figure it out. But either way, we are going to look at this game here because it was really interesting how this game turned. The position is queen, rook, and 7 pawns per side, and it looks just fine. But the way black played here, f5, saying, I don't want white to play f5 and continue gaining space, looks like a normal move. We had a queen trade, which may make you think that you're out of the woods here, but watch this sequence. The rook comes to the board's only fully open file. And I think black's move makes perfect sense. Let me fight for that file because without the rooks on the board, then we both have a passed pawn. Neither of us could probably win this. But after rook g8, e6 check, always a beautiful tactical shot because the king needs to stay in line with the rook. The only place for that is king to f8. And one more push for good measure. If the king comes up, the rook takes the rook. And once the king takes that pawn, which was on e5 the first time, now it's on e7 and becoming a queen.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those endgame things that you have to watch out for. If you don't, like, these are the kind of tricks that in endgames you're like, I'm in a rook endgame. Of course it's a draw. We both have pass pawns, and then when all of a sudden you make one wrong move and then you're just lost.
Yes, and just it's so easy to overlook the move e6 because if we just go back a couple moves here, e6 wasn't possible because the king could take it, and even one move further, e6 was certainly not available because the king and the rook are there. There's no defender. But with white threatening to go rook g5 and come after this pawn, or maybe rook h5 next and go after the h7 pawn, black felt like had to compete for the open file, and e6 check, just a nice tactical finish.
For sure.
And let's look at another interesting game that we had where, honestly, I was very impressed with this one because the players the end position is particularly brutal, but how we got here, if we go back in time a little bit, at this point, it's only one extra pawn on both sides of the board for white, so 2 pawns total, but it's not entirely clear how to make progress until you see the move that was played c5. That's pretty good tactical vision.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this is like if bishop takes c5, we've got bishop takes f6. I actually had to take a moment to just think about this position for a moment and be like, okay, wait, what happens if you just retreat your bishop, though?
Probably should have retrieved the bishop, right?
Yeah.
c5, you just move the bishop back, but you're pushing the pawns up. So a very good strategy. And the ratings of these players is black was rated 752 and white is rated 1000. So I'm not sure if the player with the 1000 rating just hasn't had a stable rating from FIDE and hasn't played enough games or anything. But this is already some good quality. And look how decisive the game gets. Taking off 6, you win a piece, but every move from here on out is perfect. Let me get my rook on the 7th rank. Let me bring my other rook in. And after rook f7, instead of just trading rooks, which simplifies into a winning endgame.
Oh, sure. Don't tell me he goes rook d8 and rook d7.
Oh, yeah. Rook d8 check, forcing the rook back, and then rook to d7. And now this is a big problem where the rooks are mowing down the 7th rank. And that, in fact, is a checkmate because the rook on f8 is boxing the king in. So you get the second rook with mate.
I really do have to wonder if a lot of these players are just straight up underrated because, I mean, it's not like, it's impossible to see, but playing that instead of just going for, easy trades where you're on material it's something that's quite difficult to do.
Yes. I mean, you just trade the pieces and you win. That's what you're taught, especially as lower rated players. When you're just getting started, you're like, oh, okay, I'm up a lot. Let me trade down. But just find this to figure out the mate is imminent. Really nice way to finish this game. And well,
for sure.
We have another game which you were fond of because Carissa Yip played the Vienna game.
Oh yes, I've been meaning to actually look at the Vienna game recently, but it's one of those openings that I'm pretty sure can only be played by people like Levy, like Levy loves these kind of tactical positions, or even Eric Rosen, but Eric Rosen obviously has his own set of different gambit tricks. And meanwhile, I'm over here like, yes, I have played the Breyer variation of the Spanish for 18 years, so I am they're of a different breed for sure.
So you're the solid of the most solid variety. You like to play these positional grinds, whereas they're playing moves like f4, and it has the king's gambit feel to it, but the knight being on c3 and f6 means that this queen can't get it to h4 in any variation. And as we saw in this game, the pawn was captured. Carissa pushed forward to e5. The queen says, hey, let's pin that pawn. You can't take my knight. And then queen e2 is played. So both bishops, the bishop on f8, the bishop on f1, they're stuck there. They can't develop. But this knight, sadly, has to go back to its starting point.
Yeah, and after that, it'll be a very comfortable position for white. And this is why you should not be taking on f4, because it does lead to very uncomfortable positions. Instead, I think d6 is playable for black.
Absolutely. D6 is one of the variations. You can even play D5. That's a common move where if white takes on E4, E5 rather, black takes on E4. And so D5 can be played, but you need to know your stuff. And Carissa, she's well versed in this. It seemed that her opponent probably wasn't so much. And after E5, the queen, they both go to the E file, the knight goes back. And look at this move, knight D5. The reason why queen in line with the enemy king, now the queen's under attack, and the queen needs to move off the E file to remain defending this pawn on C7. So just brute force here from Carissa Yip. And well, down goes the pawn D6 with check. Down goes the pawn on C7 with check. And
Oh, that's a miniature for sure.
yeah, your queen is lost. I mean, at this point, it's already just kind of beyond hope. You have to block with a piece on E7, after which white can even just take that piece or take this pawn C7 with check, win the rook in the corner. So knight D5, winning move, already on move 7.
Yeah, definitely.
So just want to show a couple more games here. We have this one, which I found pretty interesting. Malcolm Stevens with the white pieces, and the opponent, Fernandez Sanchez, with black. 2 pawns for bishop. And Nemo, this looks to my eyes at first just to be completely winning for white. It should be, because the bishop protects the pawn. And if white can just mop up the remaining pawns, it will be a win. And yet it's much more difficult than meets the eye.
Yeah, you have to be careful to not let rook to a4 happen next move, because then if king takes e5, you got rook to a5, and all of a sudden you're losing the pawn on the rook on f5, and that's a totally lost endgame.
Right. So there are some tactical tricks, and white actually took on e5, but look at this evaluation bar. I'm just go back a half step. It went from +3 about to +1, and not even quite 1.5. So that's kind of crazy to me. You stole a pawn that should be good. But what black did all of a sudden is play the rook check and then pawn to f5. And the problem for white is you need his bishop to stay protecting the pawn, but you're also going to need the bishop's help against black's passed pawn. So very smart play here from black to free up the passed pawn, because if the king can win that pawn h4, white's winning chances go out the window.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those positions where I'm like, okay, it looks like black is lost, but white surprisingly has a lot of black has surprisingly a lot of ways to come back.
Yes, and the game finished very quickly after this f4, and the rook came to e4. But now after the trade, this is pretty neat. King g3. Black
Ooh,
actually.
wait a minute.
Mm-hmm. Black.
Don't tell me black won this game.
King g3, bishop f4 check, and then king takes h4. Time trouble. It unfortunately caused us to miss things, and it makes sense. You're playing for a draw for the last bunch of moves, but black was actually winning. They don't have the engine bar to scream at them. -20. If they saw -20, of course they'd play king g2. But king g2 is winning for black because white cannot stop the pawn from queening.
I mean, endgames are just incredible, honestly. Endgames are in some ways the simplest and most complex positions for black, for anybody to play, because it's just like, you think it's fairly easy. You only have a few pieces, so calculations are naturally simpler, but there's just so many geometries and so many different positions where you realize, oh, it's not that simple. And this is one of them.
And one slip up could be of the biggest consequence, where you just made one little mistake and it goes from drawing to completely losing. And what white needed to do, instead of dropping the king to e3, which of course that move looks reasonable, right? You're just bringing your king to stop the pawn. You needed to use your bishop at this point. Bishop to e3. Now the king would take on h4, white would take on h3, and that position is a draw. You can't win with the lone bishop, and so that would have been a split point.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, you might ask, is king g2 something you could see despite in time trouble? And the answer would be, hey, if you were thinking about how would you possibly try to win an endgame, it'd be to promote your pawns, right? And a move like king g2, the idea is very simple. You just want to go promote your pawn.
That's right. And so easy to overlook for both players, and particularly for the player with the black pieces. You've just been focused on making that draw. And so you don't think, hey, wait, there could be a winning opportunity. And with only a 2-second increment, the quick time control, these mistakes do happen. So we don't fault either player. It was a missed opportunity, first for white and then quickly for black there, but ultimately the draw, I guess, is a pretty fair result. And well, this tournament, of course, if they're playing chess games, they're trying to win a world championship title, a corporate world championship, but there's also a huge charitable component. So if you are able to donate, that would be an amazing thing, because we'd like to bring to attention about the ongoing charity event. I mean, FIDE has been involved with 3 projects: Chess in Education, Chess for People with Disabilities, and FIDE Chess Veterans Support Program. So if you're able, please consider a donation with using the command donate in chat or by clicking the panel below the stream. But now let's get back to the action. And Nemo, great causes. I'm definitely a big fan of these initiatives. We were talking earlier with Sam Copeland, discussing how for many chess players out there, I mean, who've played for their whole living, when they get older, they may lose a huge source of their income, especially today during the pandemic. So I think this is a fantastic initiative.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the whole point of having a lot of these bigger chess events, like including PogChamps and the FIDE Online World Corporate Chess Championships, right? 2 totally different events. But the idea is still to bring chess to a much bigger audience than just, what was traditionally seen as for the top 20 chess players in the world. So it's honestly really, really great that not only Chess.com, but FIDE and a lot of these corporations are helping support grassroots communities and a lot of other people who want to get involved in chess.
Absolutely. And there's a worldwide effort in promoting chess and education, and love to see the work with people with disabilities. There's a world championship for people with disabilities. There's a lot of work being put in, and it is a very great cause. So happy to see FIDE doing that. And as you said, a lot of these corporations on their own in their local communities are supporting various initiatives. So that's great to see. And we're happy to be a part of it. But Nemo, the next round will start pretty shortly. So we are going to hop out of here for a quick break. And when we return, we'll get right into the action for round 2.
Yep.
And we are back covering the FIDE World Corporate Championship. Nemo, we had a great first round, and we've seen some of the top teams show their might, and we're going to get in the second round soon. But before we do, let's look at the standings, see how different companies are doing here. And as you see, Microsoft Redmond, they started off as the 1 seed. They won all 4 of their games, and that's really important. You've played in team competitions. You want to win your matches, but you really want to win them 4-0 if you can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, for those people who are maybe familiar with tie breaks in chess tournaments, the team points actually does matter when it comes to deciding tie breaks and deciding who is going to advance in the pool. So these, every single game drop might actually make a difference.
It certainly will. So if you look at these standings here, no surprise, Microsoft Redmond. We talked about Francesco Rambaldi. He's leading them, and all the way down to I'm looking at that team from Debevoise. That's the team with Raja Panjwani from Canada, International Master, on board 1. And
I'm familiar with this name.
We got one that and Alyssa Melikina, she's playing on that team. She's a lawyer representing the firm, so they really like chess. They actually host the Corporate Chess League in New York City. So I've gone as a guest several times. They do like a little blindfold simul, often with a grandmaster against some of the participants in the league. They have league matches, and it's just a really good time. They provide food. This is obviously before the pandemic, but it's always a good time. And Goldman Sachs, I have to say, 3 points out of 4. That's what happens when you have an IM matchup on one of the boards and you're favoring the other 3. You win the match, but you get 1 point taken off. So maybe an unfortunate pairing for them. What do you say, Nima?
Yeah, definitely. Maybe I was just unfortunate, and there are always these things called what's the word for it actually? Just opponents that you have a little bit of trouble against, and it's not like you're worse than them or anything. Just sometimes you just have an unfortunate opponent.
That's true. Yeah, it catches you off guard, or just it's a mental block against a specific somebody or specific style. And as we look in the Pool West B, we have American Express led by Carissa Yip. I am Mark Ginsburg also on the team. We have another squad from Deloitte. You'll see in Group A, there's Deloitte Chicago, whereas in Pool B, there is Deloitte New York. So I think they're pretty happy with their start.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually really, really happy that teams have actually, some corporations have actually decided to field 2 teams. It's pretty cool to see that there is a lot of interest from these very, very well-known companies to operate in the chess space.
For sure. And so strong players all around us, some very well-known companies. I saw Airbnb on the list, Twitter, and just
Boeing.
Boeing. We can name all the companies, honestly.
Amazon, yeah.
Too many. Facebook, you name them, they're probably there, and some serious chess competitors.
For sure.
So we have a couple minutes or just 1 minute until the round begins. And I'm just going to make sure I have the list of teams that want to cover. Plenty of them. Going to be an exciting round. So I'm ready. I'm ready for the next round.
It's going to be very, very exciting. I think one of the key people we will be looking at in this round will be Carissa. She is playing for American Express, and she is, as we know, a very, very young player and a very talented already international master.
And we have her game on screen right now. She has the black pieces against somebody rated several hundred points below her. This 2332, that's her online rating, her FIDE rating over 2400, international master. She beat women's world champion Ju Wenjun in the Cairns Cup a year ago. I annotated that game in detail. I looked through it. I thought she was very impressive. And speaking of impressive, White's playing this opening extremely quickly. The Scotch gambit, where after d4, pawn takes, instead of taking back, bishop c4 played. And now Carissa's sitting for a think, and White has more time than he started with.
Yeah, I think this is not usually the line I play, but it could be very tactical. I definitely hope that both sides know what they're getting into, because it can get crazy very quickly.
We're about to get into an Italian game. Like, we transposed, and after e5, the move is d5. You have to know this. It's very difficult for newer players to find this at the board. Carissa, of course, well-versed in her opening theory. And the reason why d5 is so important is that if you instead play the knight to e4, that knight can get stranded. Even a move like bishop d5 can simply trap the knight in its place. You can see the knight has no retreating squares to go to, and that can be a big issue. So d5 helps black develop, and knight comes to e4 where it's protected, and even if it's attacked, that pawn helps it out.
I just want to say Carissa is eating some cereal, kind of like maybe what you had earlier for dinner. A quick meal.
Yeah, because for her, believes she lives on the East Coast, so it's 10 p.m. She has this match and another. She's trying to represent Amex. It's great to see her in this field, and this already is a tough opponent. You have the black pieces. You want to score as many board points as possible, but we see that Maxime Elsman is not going to go down without a fight. I mean, I don't think there's any fear here just because the opponent's high rated. That's what happens in chess. If you're a longtime chess player, you've played a number of people higher rated than you are, and to get to the rating that you're at, you've beaten higher rated players along the way.
Yeah, for sure. And also, it's actually really, really interesting to note that these big teams, Twitter versus American Express, quite strong, very, very strong teams. And I just want to mention that for the format, you're actually allowed to have one what is the correct word for this? It's not an imported player.
Like a free agent.
Think of it. A free agent. You're allowed to have one free agent. You have to have 4 main players, of course, and at least 1 male and at least 1 female.
Yes.
So
I mean, this is a good pickup for Amex, right? Carissa Yip, very strong, a young talent from the US here, teenager, international master already. So I think that White sort of is frozen now because got to the opening stage, everything seems fine, but Carissa with a 94, this pressure for these pieces on the d4 squared later, Black is going to try to castle and play f6. This is a very common way to break the center because White's pawns on d4 and e5, it's a thorn in Black's side, particularly the pawn e5. So if you can castle and play f6, you start ripping open the position on favorable terms for yourself.
Exactly.
And
very comfortable position, I think, in my opinion, for Black at least. It's not very difficult to play, and White has to choose their moves correctly.
That's right. And I tend to say that the side that controls the pawn breaks is the side that's happy. And because Black has the clear pawn break with f6 in the relatively near future, I think Carissa's plan is clear, not to mention bishop coming out to g4, which can pin this knight, and this d4 pawn can quickly get in some trouble.
Yep.
And we mentioned this player's name, so we're going to hop on over to the game between Raja Panjwani, international master from Canada, representing Debevoise, and he's playing with the white pieces against international master Zhe Quan, and that's an all-Canadian IM battle.
I'm actually not familiar with the international master from playing Black because, I mean, as a Canadian, I would assume I know most of these players, but I'm actually really surprised to see new faces all the time. But that's absolutely awesome.
And well, it's representing Canada and companies in the United States. And right now we see a position where the bishop retreated to h5. So it did not take this knight in f3. There was no need to rush that decision. If White wants to play g4, there's the risk of overextending on the king side. Your king can become weak, and otherwise you leave the tension. But look at this move. I like that one a lot. The bishop moved away. Let's hop that knight into f5. Just looks pretty
very
pleasant.
Comfortable position here.
And if you castle for Black, you say, oh, well, what are you really getting at? If bishop g6 was played to stop this, knight f5 happens before you know it, and this bishop on e7 can get captured, and this bishop on h5. That's not a piece that you're thrilled to have. You'd rather give up that bishop than the bishop on e7, which is holding your position together.
For sure. I do think that these kind of positions are fairly easy. Oh, I'm not sure about that one. Black hasn't even castled yet.
So leaving the rook is your point that maybe there could be an attack.
Well, the thing is, I mean, Black no longer has the light square bishop, which means that h3 is not as weak as it could be. Right. And after closing off the position, obviously, White is just saying, hey, look, it's not a big deal to have a half open h-file. I highly doubt that Black would actually be able to make use of it because castling queenside is quite unlikely in this position.
Very risky considering that this pawn on d5 is already causing some problems. If you play c5, that closes down the center of the board, which White has good control of, and then White can play a3, b4, a slower approach, trying to break open the position on favorable terms. I do like White's position. I think that Roger's off to a good start.
Yeah, for sure. This is looking quite comfortable for White. He's going to have a lot of space too after he pushes e4.
And yeah, e4, f4, pawn pushes galore. I think that Roger should be happy, but you can't push them too quickly. You make a move like f4, maybe there's a problem on the g3 square. You just have to keep your eye out, but his position is very nice. And I was going to take us on over to Alyssa Melikina's game in the same matchup of Debevoise Plimpton against Goldman Sachs, and Art of Deception. What a username, huh?
Everybody else has like their real name, and then there's just Art of Deception.
Yeah, I like that name. And it's a national master, so 1877. That's not right. We have FIDE master, Alyssa Melikina, 1848. No, that's not their ratings. It's their online ratings. They don't play that much rapid chess, I'm sure. And what Alyssa's doing is actually quite common. I grew up playing alongside Alyssa in so many tournaments. She put her queen on d2, bishop on e3. It's very clear. Let's attack the h6 square. And black cannot castle because the rook is the second defender of this pawn.
And if you're trying to castle, you have to possibly play h5, which could potentially weaken your position. So it's going to be quite a hard choice for black to make here, whether or not she wants to play h5 in order to castle, or maybe she thinks she can get away with just keeping her king in the center.
Yeah, I think that already we have a slight plus for white. It's just you have the king castled, all your pieces are on squares that make sense, and you can actually consider pushing pawns. Like you can push f4 at some moment that will allow black to castle because the bishop and the queen will lose sight of h6, but maybe then play g4. Like just throw all these pawns up. That's the style of this position. And black is just sitting there, okay, I've castled, but are you really safe with that pawn storm happening?
Yeah, I like white's position a lot. This is like the dream kind of position to get out of here. You know, it's just like black is going to be the one that has to defend against an attack for the next 20 moves. You know, she might be, he might be, sorry, successful in defending it, but it's still going to be a very comfortable position for white to play.
It really is. And we see the team from Goldman Sachs, all four players, very concentrated right now. We've been tuned into this match, just staring at the board, trying to figure out the complications, representing their company. And, you know, it's interesting, Nemo, is that Goldman Sachs did not take in a free agent. They could have, but instead they're going with their employees. They're sticking to the players from the company, whereas they easily could have done what other companies did and get the likes of a top 10 player in the world.
To be fair, I do think Goldman Sachs' employees are already very strong. But of course, you know, some companies got Magnus Carlsen, and you can't really blame them for that.
Yeah, no, and that's true. And it's looking good for Goldman Sachs because I just looked at board 4, Alexandra Wiener, who I know and known for a long time. She's a friend of mine. Look at this. That king on g8 is in a world of trouble, and that bishop is attacking the queen. We're about to see a discovery to checkmate the king in just a couple moves now.
Yes, this is one very, very beautiful game. I'm not sure what happened earlier, but this is like a textbook tactic position.
Yeah, I'm going to run through the game here. D3 played against the Petrov, not giving black a clear plan by just protecting the pawn on e4 that was under attack. Bishop c5, and look at this. We had a break after king h1, very clear, let's go pawn f4. So in fact, putting the king in the corner was useful to unpin the pawn, and here goes the attack, and bishop g5. It all happened so fast with the initiative, taking on f6, stealing this h5 pawn, which is actually very risky because now black is somewhat happy about the open file, but grab the pawn, the second pawn was captured, and you can't castle kingside here. You got to just run your king.
I can't believe black just castled kingside into he has two half open files right in front of his king. It was just like, yeah, this will be fine for me, you know?
Yeah, if you're a less experienced player, you're more used to castling kingside, so I can understand why that would happen. It's actually very rare for players, I'd say below a certain rating, to castle queenside. I just don't think it happens very often. So I need to get my king out of the center, and instead of going queenside, went kingside, which of course is a mistake. And now the king is about to get checkmated. You can take this rook, bring this rook over to h6, and that king is getting.
I have to say, black really had the guts to do that.
Yeah, just mistakes happen, and I'm gonna stay in this match. We're gonna move on to another game quick because this one is about to be a checkmate. This game here, I just caught my eye. I see that the pawn on h6 was stolen. This bishop on b1 staring in the direction of the king. The rook on g3. The bishop on e5. That looks problematic for black.
Wow. These are the attacking positions I wish I could get. For real. Like these are textbook attacking positions. What's happening?
That's what happens when you're outrated by what
600
700
points.
points
True.
almost. Yeah, it's a tough matchup. And well, queen takes h6 was a pawn that was grabbed, but it's much more important than just the pawn. This king on g8 is surrounded by white's pieces, and the attack is building. There's no easy way to defend it. You have all your pieces. Try to protect your squares, g7 and f6, but yeah, this is a problematic position. So it looks like Goldman Sachs is taking this match. They've won the game on board 4. They're winning on board 2. So for Devil Boys, you need to. Oh, that's going to be checkmate at 1.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
that's I don't
happens.
know if he was asking for a faster game or if he just missed a checkmate, but either way, that was not a very comfortable game for Black to play.
No, and it's just a different rating range. It's hard, and hopefully that Dave Rock can learn from this game, because there probably were ways to fend off White's initiative. You can't blame somebody trying to go against somebody who is much higher rated. So 2 games left in this match. We can leave the match in a second. I just want to check back in. It looks like Alyssa Melikina put her pawns across here on the 4th rank.
We're playing a mini game of Connect 4.
I like the position for White, because what's Black going to do about the king? Like, are you going to cast the king set into this impending pawn storm, or are you going to keep your king in the center, in which case maybe still there would be a timely f5?
I would just vote to keep the king in the center at this point. I think if f5 happens, you take with either the g pawn or the e pawn, and then you push up the other pawn and just try to keep the position closed.
Makes sense to me. Makes sense. And you can also try to, we talked about this a little while ago, where you fend off an attack on the king side by striking in the center. Now, striking the center can be dangerous with your king still on e8, but after d5, you're putting pressure on e4 and trying to get d4 yourself with a fork on these 2 minor pieces.
Yeah, that is definitely the best that Black can hope for in this position.
It's just going to get wild, and that king it's not feeling super comfy, but d5 is thematic. And look at the clock, by the way, 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
That is a lot. He does play actually d5, like Robert said, but that is not a lot of time for the rest of the game. We're gonna see some great time scrambles in this one, I think.
And Alyssa needs to win, and Raja needs to win on his board. I'm going to go over to the game between Raja and Jaquan here, because all of a sudden we loved White's position, and now we look at the eval bar and it's plummeting, and Black is saying, hey, wait a sec, I'm going to attack you. My king on e7 is safe. The pawn on d6 is protected. And if we just go back a few moves, Nemo, after e4, we loved White's position, as did the eval bar, but sometimes bishop g5, you don't see a clear breakthrough. And once this happened, the king went up to e7. Now Black's pieces. You mentioned the rook on h8. You were prophetic here that there is an attack in the works for Black to work with.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, I think, newer players always worry about king safety. But remember, a king is only unsafe if it can be attacked. Technically, your king could be very safe on a square like d4 if you can't get attacked.
That's actually, the white king would be safer on d3.
For sure. Like in this case, the white king would be actually safer on d3 than it would be on g2, g1.
And that's why Zaquan went g5. We saw the capture. And now the king on e7 is safe. The king on g2 feeling the heat. But this is a moment where you make this little slip up as Black and your advantage goes away. I would play the move queen g6, attacking the pawn on e4, threatening pawn takes h4, and also maybe my knight can move in to start attacking this e4 pawn. So queen g6, double attack. One pawn, the other pawn, because that g3 pawn will be pinned. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a very comfortable position for Black, and it's very difficult for White to hold it all together. Let's see if he does.
I wonder if Raja felt some pressure to win, right? The position was closed after the opening. The engine really liked White because of the extra space. And then you look at your 2 boards, they're losing. So you're down 0-2. You need to win, the listening to win. That puts a lot of pressure on you. And I think for those of us who have played in team events before, we know what that's like, where you're not just playing your board, you're playing for the team match. If I'm down 2-0, I'm losing before I'm drawing, right? I'm just going all in. And actually, Raja was my teammate as well. He went to Yale for a master's degree, and we played in the Pan American Collegiate Tournament. And so we were teammates, and we actually had a match where he beat a grandmaster, and I'm playing, and I need to win the game just so our team holds the match. And I just went all in and ended up losing. But that's what happens in team matches.
Wow, we got the Yale flex over here.
Not really a flex, just a statement. Actual. But Raja and
Factual.
I, we know each other. We shared a very tiny hotel room. It was, just a bonding experience for our team.
Yeah, I mean that's very, very cool. I definitely remember playing on collegiate teams. I mean, currently actually I decided to take my own gap year from university, but playing on team tournaments is always a lot of fun. It's always a lot of fun for sure.
It really is. And well, this position doesn't look so fun for Raja. We'll let him contemplate the consequences of his recent moves. Let's move on over back to Carissa Yip's game because she looks like she's in great shape. I saw king on g3 and black is up in exchange. The bishop on c1 is pinned. It looks like she's going to take her second game.
Guys, this is why you develop your pieces, by the way. So you don't get stuck in an endgame where your king is on g3, you're almost about to get checkmated and you don't have any moves to make.
And I like the decision to win the rook on d8 for the rook on a1, but you're down material and your bishop's under attack, b2 is about to fall, so black's going to take several pawns and then promote one of them. That's good news for American Express. I'm going to keep on going down here. American Express Ginsburg, I think we know who that is. That's International Master Mark Ginsburg, who works at American Express.
I love the fact that he's got American Express in his name. I don't think he quite got the memo that he can play under, just his regular username or his name.
Honestly, I appreciate it, making this very helpful for
the for sure.
And the Chess.com team behind the scenes working very hard because now we don't need to change the name. We know who it is. And he doesn't need to change a single thing about the way he's playing chess. Speaking of developed pieces, it's an even position by material, but black can hardly move. The bishop on c8 is stuck in place. You should play b6 and bishop b7 as soon as possible. But even if you get your bishop out, this rook lands on d7 and white is taking control over the board.
Yeah, I don't see many possible moves for black here. That's the sad part. If he kind of just plays b6, like Robert said, the moment the bishop moves out away from c8, you got rook to d7. And we know that the 7th rank is the most powerful rank for your rook to be on.
That's true. And this bishop on c4, it may look like it's staring into a wall of pawns in f76, but at some moment f5 could be really dangerous as if the e pawn takes, then the f7 pawn will fall behind it. So I would be very careful as black here. Knight e7 played, I think some kind of rook d8 check. Looks really good. You force the king out to h7. I'm looking at moves like f5 to try to pry open that diagonal. Actually, you can just play rook f8, it looks like, and that pawn is a goner on f7. Just simple chess. That bishop's pinned, and all of white's pieces are working together.
Yeah, rather elementary for sure. We're just going to go for the free pawns.
Easy to overlook because honestly, I'd be at this position. Well, he plays rook e8, which is also a good move, kicking the knight. But it is easy to overlook that rook f8 just wins a pawn because you're looking for more. Like, how do I punish black for not developing? And well, there is a punishment of winning the pawn directly.
Yes.
All right, so let's keep on going within this match. I'm looking at Andy Lin with the black pieces here. And wait, it's an extra rook. So it looked at first glance, I saw the corner of my eye, I thought that it was even material. But now that I looked, that black is up a rook and this bishop on g5 is falling next. So unfortunately for white, looks over.
Yeah, this is oof. I mean, it's actually sometimes very surprising to see. You think that all players above 2000s, when you're a newer player, are kind of, gods already. But then you see somebody who's 23, 42 versus somebody who's 2000. And it just becomes a whole new level of difference. Just like how between me and Robert Hess is a whole level of difference, Rating gaps in chess are very big the higher you get.
And it's hard to figure them out. Like when you see players playing each other, wait, that's only 100 points, but 100 points can be a huge difference, especially at the higher rating levels. So a tough matchup. I wanted to get to this endgame, by the way, of Francesco Rambaldi taking on Svetlana Demchenko. A lot of your compatriots in this field. And Francesco with the black pieces, it's even material, but we see the eval bar favoring black slightly. And I think the reason why is these split pawns all over the place where white is trying to get on the offensive, but in fact, the pawns can fall and rook e1 threatens rook e4 check to win the e5 pawn directly.
Wow. I mean, Svetlana has played a very amazing game to be, at this stage against Francesco. Francesco is one of a very, very strong grandmaster.
Yeah, and it's one of these positions where it's not just about the pass pawn on f5, which can be chopped off soon, but it just seems that white's pawns, they're all over the place. They're scattered. The a2 pawn isolated, the e3 pawn isolated. And now after king takes e6, you're losing this pawn e5. Still chances to hold though, right, Nemo? Like this rook on f2 can swing to h2, try to get that rook around. You will only be down one pawn once e5 falls, and rook g2 played similar idea. So one pawn down rook endgame that still gives plenty of drawing chances to the side who is down material.
I think the number one thing about rook end games people have to be very, very aware of is the fact that one misplay can instantly turn the position into a draw. Also, one wrong move can instantly, you know, lose the position too. It's just rook end games are one of the trickiest things you could ever play.
That's true. And I really like Francesco's precise move here. Rook e4 check, and then rook c4, not taking the pawn. That pawn's not going anywhere. So I'm going to take it next move. So I'll put pressure on your c3 pawn. And if you play rook g6 check was played, but if you played rook c2 to defend, you're walking into a pin. So black can take on e5, but also can play d4, trying to make use of this pin, and then take on e5 in the near future. So both moves just look very powerful, and black is in the driver's seat. So instead, rook g6 check didn't want to sit passively, but now you are dropping the second pawn as soon as the king runs away to b5.
Yeah. And if I may ask, actually, which team is Vianu playing on?
She's playing on Deloitte Chicago. So
Deloitte Chicago. Okay.
Deloitte against Microsoft matchup. She's representing the team from Chicago. There's also the Deloitte New York team in the other pool. So it's cool to see Deloitte trying their best here. But unfortunately for them, Rambaldi and Microsoft Redmond. Honestly, I'm looking at that team, and it's going to be hard for any team to beat them.
For sure.
And okay, this one, 2 extra pawns now, pretty clear. Just try to push them together. And Francesco, too strong not to win this. Svetlana actually just resigns on the spot with 5 seconds remaining. So let's continue down our list of games. I see Lauren Goodkind here playing in this one. And she is representing the team from Twitter. And well, with the black pieces, a loss on time. But look at how dominant white's pawns were with that knight on d5. Look at this.
It's so hard to find a move here to play. I think b5, but then even then you get hit with the c5.
c5, and this knight's kind of trapped. Knight c7 check is possible. This knight can come to f6 and gobble up the h7 pawn. So it's one extra pawn, but it's also the domination of the center of the board, and this knight is just so much better than the enemy knight.
Yeah, it just goes to show how important it is, you know, to keep all of your pieces very active in endgame.
That's right. So a tough loss for her, but a nice win there for the team from American Express. That's Dario Teodori, 2,100 plus player. So Lauren Goodkind's rating is 1782. I see that's another mismatch on paper, but a good effort. And I see Megan Lee. Let's look at this game here. That's board one as a team for Microsoft Redmond, board 3 for that team. They put in one of their reserve players. So they changed their lineup for this round. Megan was playing board 4, now moves up to board 3, and their new board 4 is a 2250. So what the heck? They have all these reserves who are super strong.
Surprise! The reserve is actually the stronger player.
And what's going on here? So Megan is only up 1 pawn. The H pawn doesn't match the bishop. So if we ever get H5 and a trade there, then black can't even win, even if white blunders the knight. So this should be a draw. Black down to 4 seconds. You better not lose on time. That would be a disaster. And okay, knight back to e4 with check should be played. And knight g3, they're just repeating moves. Knight f5 actually is a funny draw. I'll show that later. But
yeah, I mean, the knight f5 check, knight f5, the main idea is that once you swap off the knight for the knight and the light squared pawn for black's light squared pawn, the bishop is on the opposite color of the square that could promote on h1. So that would just be a draw.
My favorite thing to show in my commentary. So it's relevant. Oh, it's very relevant now.
Oh, now it's relevant. Okay, now even if white did not have the knight on e4, this would still be a draw.
And what an upset this is. I mean, look at the rating differential here. I'm just going to check their FIDE ratings, but it seems that white's rating, Pratik Thorway, is 1756 and Megan Lee 2211. So it's a draw by somebody who's 450 points lower.
That sounds like me when I play my games online.
We love those upsets, and for Megan Lee, she'll be upset that she couldn't win the game. But for Microsoft Redmond, they continue to do well, and if they keep winning their matches, the game points may not matter. But every single half point, if you tie with another team, that could be of the biggest consequence.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to win every single game to win the match, right? It is 4 players per team, and you just need 2.5 points to win it. But that being said, of course, having more points on each board is definitely beneficial in terms of tiebreak. But I do believe that Microsoft Redmond is ahead right now.
Yes, they are. So they don't need to be concerned about this individual game. But, as a player, right, Nemo, we've been in these situations. We play someone lower rated. We're kind of expected to win. But I always tell people, in an individual game, rating difference, yes, it could play a part. But in one single game, a player who may be 1750 can play like a 2200, and the next game they play like an 1100, and that's why they're in the middle there. So,
actually, have you ever been flamed by your team for taking a draw?
I've been blamed by my team for taking a draw. So, not really, because when I was on the Olympiad teams, there was never really a situation where I did that. But there was one game where I actually saw my teammates' boards. They all looked like they were in trouble. This is the World Team Championship. They were in trouble. So I was like, okay, I can make this solid play, or I can do something a little drastic. And of course, I lost, and they all drew their games. So nobody blamed me, because part of the reason some of them drew was likely that my result was happening. So the people with the advantage in the other team were like, okay, I don't need to win this game.
Right.
But it's not a good feeling. That's really not a good feeling.
Yeah,
when you're
for sure.
I'm doing this for the team. And then afterwards, you're the only person who lost. So all blame could be squarely on your shoulders.
I do believe there's one time when I was playing board 1 for Canada on an Olympia team, and on the Canadian Olympia team, and I think I got less than 50%. I scored less than 50%, and that was definitely one of the worst feelings, because some of the times when you're like, the best player representing your country and you're playing board 1, people expect you to perform a little bit, and I just straight up didn't even get 50%. So.
It happens. We're all entitled to a bad tournament. It just feels worse for sure when you have teammates and you feel like, responsibility for others. It's not just your own games.
Yeah.
We've definitely been there, whether it's in chess or in work. We all know that feeling. So, well, we have a lot of results in the books. We're 2 rounds in. We've seen teams like Microsoft Redmond, American Express do really well thus far. Goldman Sachs had a tough matchup for the second round in a row. They faced a team that was surprisingly strong given the rating gap. They had players who actually matched their boards. We saw Roger Panjwani, for example, and Alyssa Melikina. They were taking on this Goldman Sachs team from Debevoise. So sometimes these happen where you may play a team that has an average rating of 2000 and Magnus Carlsen just happens to be the board 1, right? Surprise, surprise. And
yeah. Sometimes you're playing an more for fun event, and then you just run into world number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We got Ian, we got Nepo in this tournament as well. We got Anish Giri in this tournament. We have Magnus Carlsen in this tournament, as a reminder, and all of those players are playing in a different pool, so we will not see any of them tonight. But that's not to say that tonight's event is not full of really, really strong grandmasters and international masters as well. But we did also see earlier today, Anish Giri was playing, Magnus Carlsen was playing, Artemiev was playing, Nepo was playing.
Yeah,
a lot of very strong grandmasters.
And representing companies that really put a lot into chess, Aeroflot in particular. There is the very famous Aeroflot Open that I played in. Wow, I'm going to age myself, but I think 2011, I want to say. And that tournament is so strong. I was a grandmaster at the time, scoring 4.5 out of 9, and even score was like a monster performance, because they actually have a minimum rating for the top section. That's like 2550 FIDE. It's a really strong event. They have other sections as well. Aeroflot has been supporting chess for a long time. And so having a team here with Vladislav Artemiev, no surprise to see them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm very, very happy to see not only are the kind of flagship companies that have been supporting chess for a real long time be competing in this event, but also companies that are like Amazon, Twitter, haven't really seen them entering the chess space yet, but hopefully with the influx of a lot of brand new chess players and the rise of chess popularity both online and hopefully in person after the pandemic, it'll be really exciting to see if we get more corporate sponsorship for chess in order to push it to a much bigger platform.
And I have a couple questions before we go on our break. Where's the team from Twitch?
Yeah, where is the team from Twitch? Come on.
Right? Like, that's where a lot of the chess streaming happens. There are definitely employees at Twitch who love themselves a good game of chess. So where are they at?
Yeah, where's Twitch? Come on.
They could have brought a great team, I feel like, and they would have had a fantastic time as well. But in the meantime, Neem and I will take another break. The next round does not begin until 11:30 Eastern time, so not for about an hour. We'll be back a bit before then, but we're going to sign off. The players are going to get a little bit of rest. Maybe they'll get some preparation in if they can figure out who their opponents are. So on that note, stay tuned. We'll be back in a bit, and enjoy your night. If you sign off, we'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.